We're smooth 98.1 FM. Good morning and welcome to Freshly Pressed. It is time to get into the local headlines and get the analysts to help us get a better perspective of all of the headlines this morning. I've been joined by Chibuzor Nwaezeapu for a Tuesday morning. Good morning, Chibuzor.
Good morning, Amashe. Good morning, Lagos. Hope you had a wonderful Easter holiday.
Yes, I've never felt this refreshed in a long while during the Easter. Even though I know I had to come, I worked during the holidays, but there's something different about this Easter. I must confess. Maybe it comes with the time, but how was yours?
Well, I spent part of mine commuting on the roads and the air, going towards back. Well,
Uh,
I had to travel back towards Delta State. Yeah, that's what I did
okay.
spend most of my parts doing. But it was okay. It was fun to be back there. It was an interesting experience, but it's fine.
All right, so let's quickly invite the listener to be part of the conversation this morning. A very important part of it. We like you to share your thoughts relating to the headlines this morning on Freshly Pressed. If you would send those as WhatsApp messages, send them across on to 0809 444 0981. Once again, the number WhatsApp message for all your reactions to the local headlines will be to 0809 444 0981. You can also go over to a YouTube channel. We are on youtube.com/smooth981 FM Lagos. Subscribe to a YouTube channel, like it there. You get the access to go back and go do a review of all of our past edition of the show. So, Chibuzo, let's get into this paper this morning. A quick one. Let's get to the Punch newspaper. The headline: The National Economic Council (NEC) sits over the state police as governors plan forest guards. Are we still on this same matter with everything burning around us?
Okay, one of our major issues and concerns in Nigeria, obviously, is security. And that has been the driver for this particular meeting. I think this was the 140th meeting of the NEC, was presided over by the vice president. And obviously, one of the major speaking points was about the setup of the forest guards and to set up the forest guards. So it sits on the back of state police discussions that have started again, and about how various states have been asked to, how the various states and the federal government are looking at the possibility of establishing state police. So what we understand is that state governments have been asked to go and submit reports about the establishment of state police, and I think about 10 or 15 of them have submitted. So 10 states have submitted so far. I think about 10 to 15 have submitted, because I think they have 20. They're still expecting 20 states to submit their reports. But
16
they're
have
also
said
looking
they
at the
signed
option.
up.
Yeah, okay. 16 have signed up. So we're looking at an additional 20 who have not sent in their reports or their resolutions around it. And so the first step for them, one of the first steps that have been pushed forward is setting up of the forest guards to deploy forest guards across the federation, especially across the forests that line on the major roads and access points across the country, to be able to keep the forest and borders safe. Over the years, we've heard of a lot of the activities of a lot of terrorists, brigands, wherever who are denying us sleep and rest, who have taken advantage of the large expanses of land across the major roads and areas and unsupervised lands across and portions of land across the federation to serve as either their operating bases or places where they transport people across when they kidnap them or they rob them. So I think one of the ideas is to tighten up the control of those areas or those loose areas by having more of these forest guards to be able to flush out these bandits. So conceptually, it's a good idea. It's how you implement it and what kind of people you get into it. I know various states and even regions have had their own solutions to these problems by increasing the number of people that they've either recruited, they've gotten in. You've had the Amutekun, who's one of their rules was in the southwest. I know you have similar types in the southeast and also in the north. When you travel across country, you see vigilantes who also sit across the road. I think one thing, apart from just recruiting everybody left, right, and center, and having these different organizations, because you still have an STDC. It's to have an integrated solution. So if you travel between Lagos, for instance, to Benin, or you travel from Lagos to Benin, you are inundated with several checkpoints across the country, from military checkpoints to police checkpoints.
Chibuzor,
Yep.
for you as an intro, you had said during the
So I'm giving my most recent experience, which is like some
no,
3 days ago.
You flew.
No,
so
I went by road.
I went by road.
I went by road. I returned by air because
okay.
I wanted to see what was happening on the road, so I went by road.
Then you
so
had a bird's eye view of it.
I had first-hand experience. So you would see all the checkpoints that all the checkpoints, the various army, the police, NSCDC. You even have the traffic FRSC who are also on the roads, and you also see some of the vigilantes here and there. And for me, I think that you have a lot of the personnel. What they are doing is a different discussion, but you need to have more of an integrated solution. And I hope that they get to that point now that they're all sitting together and bringing forward their solutions and their proposals, that they do sit together and say, how do we integrate it? How do we put it under some loose or central command, or some command that allows us to be able to get the best out of it? How do we fund it? Because those are the questions that need to be asked long term. Then obviously they are still going to look. We are always going to debate the issue of state police. It's not so much about state police in itself, but how will state police exist? What form of state police do we have? And I think that's one of the things they want to get by asking the various states to give their proposals, because we all talk state police, but I don't think we are all clear on the exact picture of state police that we want to see. And that's one of the concerns I have.
All right, Chibuzor, if I may come in at this moment, just as we wrap up this headline, the forest guard concept, for many who are through the regional system, we know that these forest guards are not new to the Nigerian system. Once in a while, they used to be in charge to check for deforestation and all that. So is this something different from what we used to know as we speak about this? And the forest guard concept, doesn't this speak to the absence of being able to police ungoverned spaces, which the forests in the country have become at the moment?
Yes, we've always had forest guards. The entire my little knowledge of what forest guards will do, which is what you said, is basically to keep, we have forest reserves basically, and forest guards work within those reserves to ensure the security of the reserve, because within reserves, obviously, you have things like wildlife. You are not supposed to poach within the wildlife, within the forest reserve, because it's also to protect both the wildlife and forestry. They are not supposed to cut down trees. Those are the primary jobs of the forest guards, to ensure that within that space, things happen the way they ought to happen. Both the wildlife and the trees and the plants are protected. Now, because of our security needs, it looks like we want to expand on their scope of work also. It's not, Nigeria is probably not exempting that. I know that I saw, because for countries, for instance, like Thailand, that have a heavy poaching issue. Forest guards are essential to keep ensuring that the elephants and other wildlife are not killed by poachers and smuggled out. So it's not so much of an expansion on their scope of work, but also, it's almost like saying, okay, hey, this is where we are. This is what we need you to do more. But like I said, I think is that there needs to be a lot more integration into what everybody's doing together. Let's have a clear picture. This is where your responsibility starts and end. In this NSCDC keeps in this way, Amotekun and the various vigilantes keep in. And so everybody can work together to achieve the same goals.
So between the forest guard and state police, what do we really need? So we don't end up creating a state police and have them in this where they will still be in urban centers and still leave these spaces ungoverned. What do we really need? The
truth is that, like I said, the proposals for me also speak to what do we actually want from state police. They can coexist in one another, because it's like the framework of the forest is to remain within those forests. There are a lot of places that fall outside of the forest or forest reserves that need to be guarded. Across our large expanses of expressways, in whatever state or form they are in, you do not have apart from the security, the various checkpoints that people are set up for, you don't have any semblance of security across this expanse. And if you look at one of our other stories, it speaks to how people can easily be attacked on those roads. When on my journey, at some point, the driver was telling us a tale about the previous day where there were some attacks on people across particular parts of the expressway because of the poor state of the roads and the fact that people were trapped on the roads and they were basically sitting dogs. So you can't always have state police. I think for me, it's also about what conceptually, what do we want out of the state police? Do we want them in inner cities, closer home to the people that they're supposed to be guarding, to expand on the numbers of police people that we have today that are not able to able to cover your entire citizenry as set up today? Is that what we want? We want people who are closer to us, who we can identify with, who we can deal with. Then we need to look at that and say, this is what we want. The next step, obviously, for me, also the important steps are setting the mechanisms of control. Who do they report to? How drives it? And it speaks to even the set of our legal system today. The Attorney General versus the Minister for Justice, or Commissioner for Justice. How do you manage both roles? Are they reporting to the executive? Do they report to the legislature and the people directly? Are they elected roles or appointed roles? Because it sits to which, if you have a commissioner for police in charge of the state police, who selects him? Is he at the, it speaks to the point of influence that you want to design. So all these things should be designed properly to allay the fears of people, because there's a reason why we've not had state police for years. There has always been that fear of abuse.
All right, so this now leads us to our next story, and that's coming from the Vanguard newspaper. Interestingly, different papers, but then the headlines connect in a way, and it's security related. Let's get into this one, and it speaks from bandits attack luxury bus, rob the passengers, set bus ablaze in Ogun. It ties into, it fits into what you just spoke about on governed spaces along the expressway as well as the forest. So take it from there, Chibuzor.
So during the holidays, there's, I think specifically on Friday night, a group of
Chibuzor, your network, it seemed not to be connecting at the moment. We're not getting to hear your audio. It is still freshly pressed on Smooth 98.1 FM. We'd like to get your thoughts relating to the headlines this morning. If you would get them across onto 0809-444-0981 will be where we'll be reading your WhatsApp messages. And so far, we've been able to pick up our first headline, and I've got Chibuzor with us here, and it's the question of the National Economic Council sits over state police as governors plan forest guards. That was from the Punch newspaper. Chibuzor, do we have you back now? All right, so we're waiting for Chibuzor's connection, but then just going over this next story from the Vanguard newspaper. It speaks about bandits attack luxury bus, rob passengers, and set bus ablaze in Ogun. That's from the Vanguard. And from that, it's just speaking of what the Ogun State Police Command confirming that bandits attacked on Friday night, intercepted an Abakaliki-bound luxury bus, robbed all the passengers on board, and then set it ablaze. Chibuzor. And then moving on, the spokesperson for the Ogun State Police Command, Omolola Oduntola, confirmed the incident on social media, according to this story from the Vanguard, saying that the incident happened somewhere around the Oke-Ado junction at Ijebu-Mushin on the Ijebu-Ode or Benin Expressway, where the luxury bus was burnt down by the bandits. That's the word they use here. Chibuzor, we've got you back now.
Yes, sorry, apologies. So, like I was saying, I don't know how much you missed, but basically they were traveling from Maza and they were attacked along the Benin or road. They were heading for the Easter celebrations. They were attacked by the hoodlums. They were stripped of their clothing, dispossessed of their property, beaten up, abused, and then pushed back into the bus, forced back into the bus, and the bus was set aflight or ablaze. Fortunately for them, they were all able to escape from the bus with their lives, but without their property and everything left. And they basically were sitting on the express route from around 2 a.m. till later parts of the morning when they were eventually rescued. It's sad because it's a sad experience. I know a lot of people would come out with, and it speaks to what the first story that we said, the absence or challenges with security that we have across the country. any country that wants to is looking at progressing and developing should have an environment that supports, if not a 24/7 business operation, where people can move from one end of the country to the other safely. As someone who, back in the day, years ago, when I was serving, during my youth service, I had to serve somewhere up north. I utilized the night buses or the luxurious buses quite regularly back then. There were obviously, even as at, this insecurity using night buses or night trips is not new. It's something that's always been here with us. But I think it's gone from bad to worse, like every other, at least that's our perception, like every other thing we perceive these days. And we need to get to the point where we can actually safeguard our roads and whatever. And it's good to see that the previous story talked about the engagement to try and do a lot more of that. It's sad because what we need to understand in Nigeria is that if things, especially because of when I look at some of these things, I ask myself what roles the communities can play. Because for some of these guys attacking with cutlasses, and my personal belief is that they originate from communities around those areas. And we need to see we need to go back to the point again in Nigeria where we see this collective responsibility that what the little that we're doing, even keeping our communities safe, and making it safe for people passing through our communities, passing through the expressways that go past our communities, help to improve, eventually would feed into our own economic growth and stability. Because if people are able to stop over in your towns, you have small hotels or places that can take care of them, and they know they are safe, it will employ people within those communities. People within these communities can feed, they can use products. So we need to think about this thing in an integrated fashion. There are countries who have built solutions to sort out everybody. I think that's one of the things. So it's sad, and we thank God they kept their lives. They can always replace their property. So, but it's something that we need to put their hands on. The government needs to put their hands on.
Now, this takes us to the next paper, and that's the Punch newspaper, and still security. It looks over this public holiday and the celebration, security concerns were a major issue, as the paper will speak to the headlines here. The Punch newspaper headline speaks here, and it says, police warn against jungle justice. In the previous story, we just had incident where passengers barely escape by the skin of their teeth. Now we've gotten a situation where the police they're warning. The first public relations officer is speaking here. Talk to us about jungle justice if it's back again.
So I'm not going to spend so much on this. This is just going to be a public announcement. Please let us desist from jungle justice. This particular incident was basically started by some individual had gotten an alert about his car being vandalized on the streets. He reached out to the security guys in the neighborhood, that's somewhere in Itire, around Surulere, and he reached out to the security guys, and they were able to grab one of the vandals. I think the other vandals were able to escape. And this security guard, who they named, reportedly resorted to killing this guy, this vandal, and setting him ablaze. Now, once you've taken laws into your hands, it is murder. The police will treat it as such. The law will treat it as such. You are going to bring in all the interesting stories around what the person has done. In this case, all this person has done is I'm not standing in place for the late vandal, but what he's done is robbery. And it's basically vandalism. As bad as that would hurt, we would need to ask ourselves if it deserves the punishment of the death penalty, which is what this individual and his cohorts, if there are any cohorts identified, have decided to give out on their own remit. Now, a lot of us might be thinking that, hey, a thief, that this is just dealing for a thief, this is just dealing for a criminal, that, hey, an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth, a life for a life, whatever. But we've seen instances where jungle justice has gone terribly bad. I have a personal friend who, who gave me an interesting story some years ago, about a year ago, about how she narrowly escaped jungle justice years ago. And it taught her to make sure that, to ensure that she taught her to look at it from a different set of eyes. You could easily be caught in a jungle justice situation by the actual criminals just pointing fingers at you in a neighborhood you are not used to, and everybody jumps on you. So while there's, one of the reasons has always led to joining was just let us be true to ourselves, that there's a lack of trust, or there's a lack of distrust between the citizens and the security agencies. And the police should not stop at just making announcements about how jungle justice is a no-no, or it's not acceptable, or it's murder. They should also look at how do we build that relationship with our citizens. And this is a side. I don't think a lot of the police PRs are helping with a lot of the engagement they engage on social media. The police and security forces actually actively need to build that relationship with the citizens. And I think a lot of that will stop. They will dedicate and they will stop these kind of actions.
All right. That leads us now to, well, the statement is made, say no to jungle justice. So let's move on to the Guardian newspaper, where the CBN's policy will boost foreign investment. That's a professor of economics is the one speaking. And what are these economic policies that Prof is speaking about, briefly?
Okay. So the central bank, and first of all, central bank is responsible only for monetary policies, right? What that's Professor Kenny Ife is speaking about is that the current aggressive monetary policy tightening by the central bank will attract FPIs, that's foreign portfolio investments to the country. He's said that one of the things that he's spoken a lot about how the increase in NPR will make the economy attractive to foreign FPIs. Yeah, because of basically FPIs will now see that they can get a larger return on investment for the money that they put into the system when people actually try and collect that money. He's basically talked about inflation, and he's giving his own order. Inflation is mainly caused as a result of excess liquidity in the system, too much money chasing fewer goods, too much money circulation. He's talked about us facing demand pull inflation. There's also the cost push inflation, which he mentioned, and cost push inflation actually speaks to the supply end. And if we look at some of the numbers, and I'm not as educated as the professor, and I don't have his wealth of understanding or experience. If you look at the numbers that were released in MBS when they were talking about our inflation numbers, they also spoke about the impact of food, the impact of food on the food inflation and food cost of food, impact on inflation, and that speaks a lot to cost push inflation. As much as the CBN pushes on their policies, monetary policies, the other part of the leg which we are waiting for is the fiscal policies, which sits outside the CBN but speaks to the ministers. I'll make those changes. Will the policies by the CBN help? We all hope so, and we're looking forward to it. People say we're already seeing some of that coming in, but long term, what we need is a lot more fiscal. We need to sort out the issue of food inflation, because that's a heavy determinant of where we are in terms of inflation today, and it's not going to be. I don't think it's necessarily going to be addressed by aggressive NPR and other things, unless that is now translated into investments into agriculture and other fiscal activities that help change the direction that we have been moving in the last year or so.
All right, that would be where we get messages already coming in. I see a couple of messages in already, but let's get more to come in before we pick all of them up now. One swap. 0809-444-0981 will be where we shall be reading all of that messages now. So, but let's go over to economic matters once more. This one is from the Premium Times, and it says Nigerian electricity customers rose by 12.1 million in the fourth quarter of 2023. That's according to the National Bureau of Statistics. Does that translate to light availability, even with the increase in customers?
Does it? That's a question that we need to speak to. I think somewhere towards the end of the story, they talk about the electricity supply. So yes, at some point in the story, you talk about electricity supply had grown from in Q4 2023 from the previous quarter, and how it increased by 14.6% compared to what it was reported in 2022. So yes, we did see some increase in electricity supply. But the story primarily speaks about the growth in the customers, so who are supposed to be consuming the electricity. That was basically a 3.46% increase year on year. They talked about, we're looking at about a 9.5 9.56% increase for 2024 Q2. 2022 Q4. So yes, we are seeing some numbers increases within the sector. These schools are reporting some increases in revenue, which they were able to collect. So obviously, we're looking at the fact that their collection processes hopefully have increased. They also talked about increased metering, which also points to the same fact, because the assumption is that if you would reduce the number of people that you're estimating to get actual value for the electricity you're supplying, and that revenue is actually coming to the DISCO accounts instead of going to the various individuals that are sitting as gatekeepers for managing this estimated billing. So yes, all in all, the numbers look to be increasing from point to point. Does this speak to the improvement in services? No. And unfortunately, Wade is not here this morning. He's the one who likes talking about the inverted triangle when it comes to every supply. Because at the end of the day, the guys who have invested into the sector are business people. There has to be that meeting between what is the current tariffs to make the business attractive for them to be able to invest more. And that will always be driven by the customer. So yes, the more you have customers, you have paying customers who are billable. Hopefully, we're able to get to that point where the customers are able to either to meet those numbers that will drive additional investment by the investors into the sector. And we're able to get proper, better services than where we're getting now. Because what we are beginning to see in particular parts of our system is that it moved to alternate sources of power outside the grid. If once you can afford it, people are switching on because of the unreliability of what we're offering now. So we need to look at this. We don't have enough time to look at the entire problems of the sector, but so we'll keep it at this for now.
All right, let's go over a message I see here, and I see that's Aisha's message. And Aisha's message is saying, we're talking about insecurity constantly. Went to the market and was perplexed, what is for the poor, which we call talakawa in Hausa. Bread is selling for 1,700, which was 500 last year. Gari is about 2,500 per paint rubber, which was 800 naira last year. Rice is about 8,000 naira paint bucket, which was 2,000 naira last year. And it goes on talk about the noodles right now. How much? What should the poor eat? They definitely are in a situation of dog eat dog. So whatever we see, we should just be careful and don't stray too far from home. And that's what Aisha's message is this morning. And then Fabian from Ekbe says, I sympathize with the passengers who were attacked on the expressway. My take is that the Inspector General should resign and all policemen who are attached to private citizens should be withdrawn. I don't think the responsibility of security should be continuously placed on citizens. Why do we pay our taxes? The government can and should do better work. That's from Fabian from Ekbe this morning. And Chibuzor, this is where we anchor Freshly Pressed this morning. We want to say thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Mashe. It's been a lovely time.
Have yourself